Morning. My name is Dr. Esselstyn. Thank heavens for the wonders of modern technology. We have arrived. I can't tell you how proud I am and honored to be a part of Steve Shore's wonderful symposium again. Just imagine 80 presenters having their message brought together for thousands of people. Really a very impressive effort. Well, we got a lot of data to go through today. If we're going to stop the cause of heart disease, and which is the leading killer of women and men in Western civilization. And if you were a cardiac surgeon and you decided you'd hang out your shingle in rural China, Central Africa, the Tarahumara Indians in northern Mexico, the Papua Highlands in New Guinea, you can forget it. You better plan on selling pencils. Why? They don't have cardiovascular disease there. At least they didn't until there was the introduction of the Western diet. Now, this is the oldest slide in my presentation. And I took this in 1968 when I was leaving Vietnam, having spent a year there as a combat surgeon. And this slide is to remind me to share with the audience that in Korea, when we autopsied our GIs who had died in combat, it was interesting that already 80% of those young GIs, as an average age of 20, already had gross evidence of coronary artery disease, as you could see without a microscope, not enough for their cardiac events yet. So that same study was then repeated 45 years later, this time looking at young women and men between the ages of 17 and 34 who had died of accidents, homicides, and suicides. And the early coronary disease now was ubiquitous. So any of you in the audience who are over the age of 17 who have been eating the traditional Western diet can rest assured that you probably already have the beginnings of coronary disease. Now, when we had a chance to really get it right was in World War II. You may recall in World War II when the Axis powers of Germany overran the Low Countries of Holland and Belgium and occupied Denmark and Norway. Characteristically, the Germans took away their livestock. So their cattle, their sheep, their goats, their pigs, their chickens, their turkeys, suddenly now were gone. And these Western European countries were thriving on whole food, plant-based nutrition. And it was up to Doctors Strom and Janssen in 1951, reported in the leading medical journal in England, The Lancet, the experience that Norway had with deaths from heart attack and stroke during this same time period. So let's work together on the left of this slide, and you can see that in 1927, deaths from heart attack and stroke in Norway going up. 1930, going up. 1935, going up. 1939, in come the Germans. Suddenly, deaths from heart attack and stroke were plummeting. Who knew that these Germans were these great public health educators? But look what happened. In 1945, with the cessation of hostilities in the European theater and the death of Adolf Hitler, back comes the meat, back comes the dairy, back come the strokes, back come the heart attacks. But sadly, we just did not get it, all right? Now here, what we have are two arteries, and obviously the one on the right is severely diseased, and you're probably saying to yourselves, when that small opening closes, there'll probably be a heart attack. Well, actually, in actual fact, only about 10% of heart attacks come from something that is this severe. Why? Because as this artery has slowly been closing, the downstream heart muscle appears to recognize that it's not getting its due supply of nutrients, and it begins to make little tiny collaterals that go around this blockage So that, interestingly enough, as you often will see on a patient's angiogram, even though they've had an artery, major artery that's 100% blocked, no heart attack. Why? Because you will see those streaming collaterals going around the blockage with enough blood, oxygen, and nutrients to sustain the downstream heart muscle with this blockage. Now, let's look at the artery on the left. What I want you to notice there particularly, that'll be for those of you who, even in the backs, can perhaps see this tiny little line of cells that lines the innermost part of the artery with the name of the endothelial cells. And we're going to hear more about those later, but they're absolutely key to the health of the blood vessel. Now, when we start eating the pizza, the milkshake, the cheeseburger, things begin to get sticky in our blood flow. Our platelets get sticky. Our white cells get sticky. Our cholesterol gets sticky. And we'll see how important that can be. Here is a slide that I borrowed from Harvard. This is Peter Libby's slide. And if you look at the area that is blue, that's where the blood is flowing. And you can see what separates the blue from the artery wall is those single layers, a purple layer here, single layer of cells. And let's make sense out of this by together starting in the upper left-hand corner, where there you see the LDL cholesterol painted orange by Peter Libby. Now you can see how that LDL cholesterol can then migrate through the cracks and fissures between these endothelial cells into the subendothelial space. Once in the subendothelial space, from the free radicals from this Western diet that we've been eating, that LDL becomes oxidized. And now it no longer is painted orange, but Peter Libby now paints it yellow to indicate that it is a small, hard, dense, oxidized LDL particle. And the subendothelial space does not appear to like this at all and calls upon our SWAT team, which are these blue macrophages that you can see also migrating into the subendothelial space, where going from left to right, it gobbles up progressively all these small, hard, dense LDL particles until we get all the way over to the right-hand side, where when this macrophage becomes absolutely chock full, we in medicine then change the name. It is now called the foam cell. And the foam cell is truly the Darth Vader of this sequence of events. Why? Because the foam cell is now manufacturing these nasty metalloproteinases, stromelicin, elastase, collagenase, myeloperoxidase. What do they do that's so bad? They progressively, as you will notice here on the figure on the left, they progressively will thin out the cap over the plaque until it gets so thin that the sheer force of blood racing over that thinned out cap over the plaque tears it. And now you have a rupture of the plaque with the extravasation, or the oozing out of, if you will, of plaque content into the flowing blood. That contents that came from the plaque is highly thrombogenic, activating platelets. So now we see in the middle figure at the top of the plaque, a clot is beginning to form. And that clot is in and of itself self-propagating, so that in a matter of minutes, we then get all the way over to the figure on the right, where the artery is now 100% blocked. All the downstream heart muscle is deprived of its oxygen and nutrients, and it starts to die. And that, gentlemen, is 90% of the heart attacks. Now, if I do my job correctly, hopefully today, all of you and your friends and maybe relatives can make themselves heart attack proof. How are you going to do that? We're going to do that by changing your biochemistry. How are we going to do that? We're going to change your biochemistry by changing what you eat to whole food, plant-based nutrition. When that happens, this entire cascade of events that I've just described to you is going to be eliminated. there is not going to be migration of your LDL cholesterol into the subendothelial space. There's not going to be the acquisition of the foam cell. There's not going to be metalloproteinases that are going to erode and thin the cap. As a matter of fact, when you're eating this way, you will strengthen the cap over your plaque. When you strengthen the cap over your plaque, it cannot rupture. If it cannot rupture, you have now made yourself heart attack proof. Now, this is a slide where you can forget about looking at the X-ray. We're going to focus on the artist drawing of this opened artery, and you can see that half of the opening is filled with plaque, and the other half is open. And the area that is open, you can see it is lined with these endothelial cells. Now, it's interesting that up until about 1980, that we used to think of the endothelial cells as these cute little red bricks that were lining these wonderful pipes. But all that changed in 1980